Hey Review family, how's it going? I hope you're having a great day. My name is Jay Morris, Review Guy, and I'm back again to bring you another video, and in this one I'm going to be covering the new Baroness record entitled Gold and Grey. This is the fifth studio-length album by the Savannah, Georgia band Baroness, formed in 2003 and often hailed as one of the greatest sludge metal bands of the 2000s and the 2010s. Known for kind of merging progressive rock and alternative rock with their normal sludge metal repertoire and encasing it all in this very vintage feel overall, this is a record that was very highly anticipated by fans and kind of critics alike for the fact that it is following up their highly critically acclaimed record, Purple, that was released back in 2015. An album that was only 42 minutes in length, and this was just a critically acclaimed album by everyone. People that didn't know what the hell they were, people that were in the rock community, the sludge community, the stoner community, and pretty much everything in between. And this followed up their super ambitious double album that they released prior to it, Yellow and Green, and this was over an hour's worth of material. They've kind of returned to that with Gold and Grey, pushing past the hour mark just barely with 17 tracks and plenty of interludes and some pretty long song lengths. Baroness had the issue that a lot of bands have. How are they going to follow their big record up? How are they going to be able to outdo that? Because a lot of people were iffy on the massive length and the massive undertaking that was Yellow and Green. Purple was their big album that had a length that people seemed to agree with and that seemed to be applicable to the widest number of people. So how is this going to work? The fact that they were pushing into the hour mark once again with a very packed track listing, even if some of them don't breach the 1 minute mark, the 2 minute mark, the 3 minute mark, alongside plenty that reach into the 4, 5, 6 minute mark. I would like to read a little bit of an excerpt from John Baizley, the lead vocalist and kind of frontman of the band, because I do think that this is very substantive for this release. He said, "Our goal is, and will always be to write increasingly superior, more honest, and compelling songs and to develop a more unique and challenging sound. I'm sure we have just finished our best, most adventurous album to date. We dug incredibly deep, challenged ourselves, and recorded a record I'm positive we could never again replicate. I consider myself incredibly fortunate to know Sebastian, Nick, and Gina as both my bandmates and my friends. They have pushed me to become a better songwriter, musician, and vocalist. We're all extremely excited for this release, which includes quite a few firsts for the band, and we're thrilled to be back on tour to play these psychotic songs for our fans. Expect some surprises." Verdict on this album would have to be that I think Baroness has not reinvented their sound probably as much as Baizley is necessarily saying. I do think that their drum work is still sometimes chaotic, sometimes measured. I do think that the vocal performance is very harrowing and inspirited. I do think that the bass lines can feel a little bit muddied but are still there. I think the overall mix does have a habit of getting a little bit muddied, but otherwise is a very nice sludge metal production style, and I think that the guitars are fuzzed out at times, but they really do make some nice melodies also. I think that the lyrics are very intelligible and very intelligent. And I think that this whole album just has a nice feel from the department of merging all these genres, from the very first track, Front Toward Enemy, which just has this so 1970s progressive rock feel to it. Like, it feels like a song that could have been ripped from the Rush playbook or the King Crimson playbook and just sped up a little bit with some sludgy, fuzzed out dual guitars and a crusty bass performance and John's just frigid, howled vocals, which also have that vintage feel to them in my opinion. I'm Already Gone features kind of a lot of the same things that the first track features. I don't really see that much difference, and it does have a striking familiarity to it. Whereas Seasons, one of these singles, is just completely insane and high energy and high octane action and just passion in music form. The drum lines can feature like chaotic feel, and they can also feel this kind of measured feel, although I do think that the standout thing on this track would have to be John's vocal performance. But near the 3 minute mark, it just hits this sonic peak with drums that start to just sound so abrasive and fastly played that they could be ripped out of a death metal track, which is not something that I would have expected. And then it just descends into this almost western standoff riff and a just grimy bass line that is a little bit quieter than I might have liked, but still audible, still nice, still there. Sevens is a beautiful, quick, interlude, and it's weird that it's here in the track listing because I do not really feel like the track that follows it, Tourniquet, except for the start of it, sounds that much different than the previous tracks. And a lot of times interludes are used as a way to pad out a track listing, to add not necessarily fluff, but padding for the songs that come before and after. And it's also used a lot of times to create this cohesion between a project and say that this is a part, this is a part, these two are a little bit different, or maybe there's a different concept at play, but I don't really feel that a lot of time here. And slapped at this point in the track listing, it just feels a little bit out of place. The drifting vocals of Tourniquet alongside this just vintage feeling acoustic guitar sounds like something ripped straight out of the Pink Floyd playbook, like something that could have been featured on like The Wall or even Dark Side of the Moon at times. Other than that, I think it takes a pretty routine sludge metal and blues metal vibe to it, except for the fact that I do think the guitars on this track sound a little bit more bright, a little bit more sunny, a little bit more radiant and welcoming. Whereas some of the riffs on other tracks can feel a little bit distorted and fuzzy and like unwelcoming, abrasive at times, dark, a little bit demented, but still maintaining this triumphant, victorious feel to it, which I have always enjoyed from Baroness. And then you have Anchor's Lament, which is 1 minute and 39 seconds, another interlude, and once again, the Pink Floydisms cannot be denied. I think the violin also adds this just such epic orchestral feel to it, even though it's pretty simplistic and minimalist in the way that it's applied. Most of the interludes on this track listing are applied in a meticulous fashion, a simplistic fashion, but they just add so much punch to this track listing. Even though sometimes I feel like they stack so many of them, these end up being some of my favorite tracks on the album for just the atmosphere that they add, for how they break up this track listing in kind of unexpected and interesting ways, even if it's not the most like out there or abstract or experimental way. Throw Me an Anchor is like this noisy anthem. The drums, when it click, 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 and then it just bangs, sounds like gunshots firing off. And even though this track does take more of an abrasive feel to it for the most part, it's very high energy throughout the entire track. I almost wish that some of the drums might have stayed a little bit as chaotic as they did in like those first 10 seconds, because those gunshot, however they mixed it to sound so raw in your face and focused and precise, but just so stripped back, it was a surprise on the record, and for it to just go by in a flash, it's just one of those things that goes to show the little like bits and pieces of detail that Baroness puts in their music to set it apart from other bands, where they'll put in these little ideas, these little sections that just kind of catch you, that grab you right away. I Do Anything is a ballad cloaked in swirling pianos and simplistic guitar playing, but the main standout is just the way this atmosphere builds as the track progresses, and it just builds and it builds and it builds and it swells up and it swelters with this just harrowing vocal performance by John. It's just so simple, but it has so much natural girth to it. It's like, it's not just some lifeless ballad tacked onto this record just for the sake of having a ballad tacked onto the record. It just feels passionate. It feels like it comes from the heart. So as I'm reaching the latter half of this review, something that I do want to get out of the way is one of the main reasons I'm not really talking about the rest of this record is it follows a pretty structural pattern. And for a long length, it's kind of a strange pattern. Interludes and fairly long tracks that have this sometimes chaotic, sometimes sludgy feel to it. And as this track listing progresses, a lot of times I ask myself if some of these tracks necessarily needed to be here. Now, Baroness has so much talent backing them, so it's hard for me to say this track should have been cut out, that track should have been cut out. But without a doubt, as I progress through this track listing, the way that they just shoot these interludes at you, these very pretty interludes, these very harrowing tracks, these sludgy tracks, these blues rock tracks, these heavy metal tracks, these so many things going into what, and just this big melting pot. A lot of times it leaves me just a little bit cold, and it seems a little formulaic as it continues, and it's padding out, and you're getting the same ideas kind of just executed in a tiny different way, that you can see different progressions, and you can see different riffs, and occasionally you'll see a different drum fill and a different bass line, and sometimes John will do something different with his vocals, and you might be saying to yourself, well, that's kind of music in general, but the way it's executed here, it's just like they're tweaking little things to make entirely new tracks that maybe didn't need to be made. But as a follow-up to Purple, I think Baroness has come through, and I was a little weary going into this record, worried that it was so long, and I was hoping that they were going to be able to come through, and despite the formulaic thing, there's not really anything I have to complain about this album for. I did feel like Purple was a little bit over-compressed and over-modulated, I'll come out and say that, but I don't think Gold and Grey, is at all. I think it's perfectly mixed. So this is the final piece of their chromatically themed records, and I think it's a conclusive and nice farewell, a swan song to the Baroness chromatically themed records, and I look forward to seeing what the band's going to do going forward, because they're always very intriguing, very interesting to listen to, because there's not many other people, not many other bands doing what they're doing at the level they're doing with the interesting qualities that they're doing. I'm going to be giving this album a 7.5 out of 10. And that is a wrap. Please stay for the end screen links and videos you might be interested in. Have you heard this new Baroness record? If you have, you can let me know in the comment section below what you thought of it. I'd love to discuss a record with you. Be sure to subscribe if you're new here, like this video if you enjoyed, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. I'll talk to you guys next time, but until then, my name is Jay Morse, Review Guy, you know who it is, and I'm signing off saying farewell.